Okay, guys, welcome to the Mediball Mastery. It's interesting when I put a poll out last week to try and gauge the understanding levels, really, of what we do with med balls and why they're so important, why we need them, etc. And the understanding is a little bit hazy, really, out there. So I want to try and do this to try and help with that, to try and help understand the reasons for the med balls. And the reasons are exhaustive, really. So I've tried to keep this quite punchy. You know, I don't want to go on too long and bore you. So hopefully we'll get to the sort of root of it all, and you'll leave understanding. And at the end, we'll have a little Q&A. Okay, so the med balls, they're possibly one of the most crucial bits of kit we can use when it comes to sort of training a fast bowler. But they're really underused and misunderstood. And the reason I know this is just when you see how few people are using them, you really understand how there's such a lack of knowledge out there about how to train and prepare fast bowlers. Okay, 2 seconds. Let me just make sure. So can you guys see now the window saying the Mediballs are possibly one of the most crucial bits of kit? Someone let me know. Phil, I'm going to come to you. You can talk. Hey, Phil, what can you see, buddy?
Hi, mate. I can see the Mediballs are possibly, but in front of it, I've got audience window. The window is what your audience sees. Drag it to the screen your audience will be looking at and into full screen mode.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what's going on with that then. Let me try something else.
I'll send you a picture of what I can see.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Good stuff. Cheers, buddy.
Okay, Jenna.
Okay. So yeah, like the amount of people who come on and I speak to them and talk about their med ball use and they say the club haven't got one. And it's just crazy because it's so important to have this bit of kit. It really is. It's vital. So that's why, you know, we really need to understand it and understand the reasons behind everything we're doing with it as well. Okay. So they play a key role in every stage of training, like throughout the year. And they're not just a warm-up tool. They're a tool for everything. Okay. We'll get into that today and you'll see just how important they are. They truly are just so crucial with everything. Oh, come backwards. So if we look at this, this is telling us, I've took this adapted it from Eric Cressy, who's a baseball S&C, who's one of the best in the world, really, when it comes to sort of throwing athletes. And this is the strength speed continuum. So at one end, you've got absolute speed, then you've got speed, strength, speed, and absolute strength. Most people only operate from absolute strength. That's it. They just sit in there and they don't really get out of there, and they hop from that to absolute speed, which is max intent bowling or normal bowling when we're going flat out. And they miss out everything in the middle. So you've got speed strength work, which would be considered as weighted ball work. You got strength speed, which is where the Mediballs sit. Okay, and it's crucial that we nail all sort of 4 assets. But medicine balls sit in that strength speed, but they can be in that speed strength as well. And then absolute speed is when doing the max intent bowling, the stuff Steph talks about, auto reg, that sort of thing, is when we really are going sort of balls to the wall and making sure we're covering off everything. So why do we need them? Most players only train in the sagittal plane. Okay, and if we look at the little picture there, that shows the sort of planes of motion. And there's basically 3. We've got the sagittal, which is basically a squat. You know, that's the sagittal frame. We got the frontal plane, which is across, and the horizontal axis. Okay, we need to be training all 3 but most people just stay in the sagittal plane. So we need to get out of that, and we need to get out of that pretty quick. It's really important we do that. Otherwise, you're going to try and go from one to the other, and it doesn't work. This is where most things break down. People just train strength and try to bowl, or just sprint and try to bowl. They never get close to actually understanding what the body needs during the bowling. And that's where the Mediballs can come in. So, as I touched on, if you saw the post last week, there's three key forms of using the Medballs. We've got global training, which is sort of general prep, sequencing, or SDE, which is your specialized development exercise, or specifics. Okay, so they're the three we're going to really look at today. So planning. It's really important to think of the times of year and what you need in each of those times for your development. You know, when the bowling loads are higher, the Mediball work goes down because there's a cost to eat. There's a cost to everything when you're training. Okay, so we need to understand what the cost is to people and what the way that we need to up it and lower it at certain times. So we need to treat it similar to plyometric contracts. Okay, really important we do that so that the body is understanding and we don't overload it, because it's a very central nervous system dominant thing we're going to do, and we can't be overloading it at all. So what do we do early off season? This is where we're a little bit more sort of shot put based. Less overall load than true power. So training mode is slightly different, more efficient on the body. So say you're doing Medballs, it's very different than doing a clean or any Olympic lift variant. It's a lot easier on the body, a lot less taxing. So we're getting more bang for the buck. Okay, because obviously if we're doing things like snatches, clean and pulls, again, we're just in the sagittal plane. And it's actually a lot slower, even though we're trying to move a bar quick in Olympic lifting. No, it's so much slower than what happens when you're bowling. There really is very little transfer. So that's where the Medballs come in, because they're so useful. And it's great to work with a contrast when you're doing sort of that early phase of strength work. So, you know, some people just love to do the squats and those sorts of things. But then if you pair it with some form of Mediball work where we're getting out of the sagittal plane, then we can help some form of transference. You know, and of course, one of the key things, it gets twisted a little bit, but we do want people and players to be strong. We just don't want them to stay in that strength all the time, because that's what happens. People just stay in strength work and they don't get out of it. So we want strength, but we don't want to stay there. And this will, you know, using the Mediballs, help work through movement as well. You know, hip shoulder separation work, anti-rotation work for core, which we're going to go on to. You know, there's so many great things we get with the Mediballs. So when we look at sort of late off season, so in the UK, I'd consider this sort of February, March time. That's when we were getting more overhead based and really working through what we want to see in your action. So this is when, you know, we can't think of what we're trying to do when we bowl. So we have to be thinking of it when we do overhead Mediball work, because that's when we can think. And when we do, we can see good transference into the bowling. So when we use it in and around your action, we see so much more bang for your buck. You know, warm-ups, heavily focused, priming that CNS, really getting ready to go. So in season, like I said earlier, the volume comes down when you're in heavier bowling workloads, you know, but if you're only bowling, say 3 times a week, and one of those is the game on a Saturday, and then you're net bowling on a Tuesday, Thursday, say 5 overs each. So you're hitting around maybe 20 overs a week. There's still time there, especially in and around those warm-ups where we can use it. Okay, so it doesn't go completely. We just have to vary it. As one comes up, one comes down. Okay. And with a global base warm-up, you can almost use that as mini sessions. You know, if you're short on time, you can do a little sort of Mediball explosive session and be ready to go. Again, heavily focusing the warm-up, priming that CNS, so we're good to go. So here we're going to get into some videos now, and when we talk about global, here are some variations. So in one there, in the moment, I'm doing thoracic based slams, and over here. Doesn't fancy playing. But normal slams. Okay, we go through that. I drag it through. So those are two very, very simple, just global Mediball work where we're just expressing power with movement as well with a thoracic there. We move on to the next ones. We're getting into a Mediball slam with a hip toss. So we're just getting a little bit of extra movement in and around the hips with that, but we'd still class this as quite a sort of gross motor movement with the global capabilities in there too. Then we move on to some anti sort of rotational core work here. So if you see on the left there, we're in a bowling position and he's having to accept the ball and hold. Okay, so this is really good for that reflex core, getting holding, then the last one slamming forward. If we see on the right there, in the GHD on the side, you know, for core work, this is fantastic. This was Big George Scrimshaw a few years ago when he was with us, getting that core nice and strong, catching it overhead as well. You can catch it in front. And then in the middle, we've got some hip toss and catch. Hip toss and catch. Okay. So again, some great anti-rotational work there for the core. And this Swiss ball one is a really good one. Okay, when people look at things, they can think too much is moving. The only thing's really moving here is a little bit of thoracic in his arms. If we watch it again, look, his core's tight. It has to go. So it's wanting to be pulled into rotation, but it can't be. Okay. I mean, when you think of some like normal core that gets sort of put around out there, it's so superior than doing the crunches and that sort of thing. And then again, we see here, arms up, having to accept the ball, similar to the other one, but this time we're in a half kneeling position, reflex core on, and then just letting it drop, and then slamming that last one. Fantastic for the core, that one. So if we look at here, half kneeling again, but this time he's putting the power in, and look, watch that thoracic. See that thoracic go back? Great in the half kneeling position because we then don't go into extension at the lumbar, but we can still express that power. So now we're thinking more sequencing work than anything else. Okay. And again, but this time we are tall kneeling position. Again, expressing that power. Now this one you could put in global, but as we're sort of half kneeling, I quite like it. But it's got aspects of everything in there. Again, we're going anti-extension. It's a fantastic drill there. So on the left here, we're going for a front foot contact straight slam. Again, getting that sequencing right. So the connect chain working from top to bottom. Sorry, from bottom to top. Okay. And that's how we want it to be working. And then if you have a little look at Leachy here, between the knees, he has got a ball there. So that is focusing now on some hip shoulder separation into some shot put work. So this is where, again, that sequencing comes in. We were trying to get him have a little bit more hip shoulder separation, trying to access a little bit more pace. And that's where these bad boys come in. So we move on, we see again. Now this time we're Big Dylan here. He's set up in his front foot contact position, and we were trying to sequence him to get the hip to come form first. So the hip is just about there. Ideally, he'd be a touch further back with his thoracic, but if you were looking from the top, you'd see a big difference in the shoulder angle to the pelvis angle. And then he gets that power out and comes through. So it's all about where the hips are. And then Moz here, he had a bungee cord round. You see this guy here was pulling him. So we're doing a bit of overspeed work, double back foot hop to med ball throw. And sorry that the videos have gone really junky and not playing, but you can sort of see what's happening there. Double back foot hop, then the sequence to try and push through. You see his back foot came off, so we didn't want that, but you get the good idea there. Okay, these two a couple of beauties. So we've got Barney here. This is pre-game, just getting front foot contact, and instead of slamming down, slamming forward. So we do that quite a lot before going out, just a set of 3 or 6. And then this one is fantastic for throwing power. So you see, drops it down, accepts it on the Swiss ball, gets that thoracic coming to extension, but not the lumbar, and throwing it back up. A really strong, powerful one, this one. Really like it. And if you've got the space, instead of throwing it back up, we can be throwing it forward. So a little beauty there. Moving on, this is a great one from Steph for hip shoulder separation. Okay, so on the side, what's going to happen? Knee's going to rock back, and then it's going to rock forward. So the knee comes forward first, and then the arm comes round after. Okay, so the knees go back as they come forward. They come forward. So see that hip shoulder separation there. And then the arm comes through. Good stuff from Big Tonguey. This time we're overcoming. Okay, so we've got Finchy here pushing the ball. So that static energy is building. And we've got the hip shoulder separation, then let go and power through. Really good one again, just before going out. And then when we get into specifics here, so this is like the really specific stuff. We've got Moz here. He was on a small little bench, and he comes off into a depth jump with the bungee, pulling him forward because we were trying to really get him to come through the crease. Nice strong contact into double hop and slam. Okay. Really nice one there. And then we go in again. We'll see Moz come into picture. So walking through, ball above, working on his mechanics and slamming it through. So you can see just how specific we were getting then. Okay. Same again here with Moz, but this time he was just stood throwing it, but making sure we are hitting the positions we want him to see him doing out on the pitch. So, and this was one of the one-to-one guys doing it in his garden. I just wanted to put this in here just to show you. Some people say, can't get down anywhere, can't get down, do it here, there, everywhere. He was just doing it in his garden against the wall. Okay, just make sure your neighbors aren't in. But if you've got a wall and a bit of land somewhere, get the med ball and get after it. Okay, so see the intensity he was doing it with as well. So some tips and cues to take out of this. When you're doing it, we want maximal intent. You know, you want to be trying to break the ball, is a rule of thumb, really. Okay, so that's where we get the big transference, is going from that high intensity. Because if we're just doing it at 50%, it's worth it as walkthroughs. Okay, it's just not worth it. So we have to have that intent there. We need to pick the right weight. Now, a good rule of thumb here, when we're going overhead, I'm not a massive fan of going too much over 2K. We don't need it too heavy that a lot of mechanics break down. You go into extension at low back, those sorts of things. So 2K is about right. Younger guys, probably under 16, 15, I'd probably just be sticking to 1K. And then if we're doing shot put or the global work, we can be going between 3, 5, 6K. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Always pay attention to form. Massively crucial, that bit. So everything we're doing, remember here, this is where we can think of it. We can't think of it in bowling, but here we can. Understand exactly what you're trying to do. Are you in the warm-up phase? Is just something priming your CNS? Or are we working on sequencing? Or is this really specific you're doing just before you're bowling? And what should your feet and lower body look like when you're doing it? And remember, hips deliver the hand. It's all in the lower body and hips. If we get that right, everything else will come after it. Okay, so that's it. We'll move on to questions now. I'm just gonna stop the recording and then